The 2020 election, a time where the country's two top candidates come together head to head with their vice presidents as we vote as to see which one is going to be leading our country into victory. Well, not this year. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Hafeezat. I am a current events and lifestyle blogger, vlogger, YouTuber, Instagrammer, social media extraordinaire. And I'm here on your screen to tell you to stop yelling at people, to vote. Now, before we get started, if you're not following me on my social media, you really should, because I share more of my thoughts on there in regards to voting and just things in general. So make sure to follow me. It's @_Hafeezat on Twitter and Instagram. And besides that, I will have my iPad here on with me just so I can stay on topic. I'm trying to keep this short. I always say we try to keep it short, and then it's never short. So we'll see. I don't want to make any promises. It's really good to be back in front of the camera, and I hope that this new schedule that I have for me is going to keep me on track. So we shall see. So it's the 2020 election season, and a lot of people's emotions are running quite high, to the point in which you have videos like this.
Listen, kiddo, I get it. I don't like the two-party system. I think our country's corrupt, and quite frankly, I don't want to vote for Biden. It feels like voting for a Republican. But I'm gonna do it. You want to know why? Because the alternative is a fucking fascist. A fascist is a fascist. Maybe we can have the conversation about dismantling the two-party system when a fascist isn't running. Maybe we can do that later, kiddo. Champ. Chief. Maybe we can talk about it later.
And I agree, President Trump is not it. He's not that girl, like not at all. You know, he has brought us to the brink of possible extinction at this point in terms of COVID, because we just keep going up in cases every single day. I literally just got a notification saying that we've had the highest cases today, and it is September 26th. This started back in March. We are not okay, not at all. But that being said, Joe Biden. Listen, I have lots of words about Joe Biden, but that's not what we're here for. What we're here today is just to talk about the idea of voting and why a lot of people's logic around voting is potentially flawed. So, right now, presidential election is happening. We have two candidates. We have Trump and we have Biden. Both of them have their faults in regards to whatever they believe in. One of them has some positives. I can't say much for the other person, but they're not the best candidates. You know, we had Bernie, love that bro, but like he had to concede because the DNC likes to mess people up and put in people that are not going to create tangible change, but that's for another video. So now we have Biden. We're stuck with Biden as a Democratic nominee. And people are saying, well, it's either Biden or fascism. But is it really? Not only that, but I am conflicted about just solely voting for Biden just because he's a Democrat, because the two-party system as a whole is ineffective. People don't necessarily wholeheartedly agree all the time with one party's politics over another's. There's always going to be nuance for the most part. Don't vote just because it's a Democrat. Try to look into more about what they believe in, what their policies and whatever. And in that case, that's what I'm looking for when it comes to Biden. Biden, however, is not as progressive enough as I want him to be. However, Trump. I can see why people are making videos like this person did, because this election is very, very crucial. These past 4 years have been hell for a lot of people, especially those within marginalized communities. Another 4 years of Trump seems completely out of the ordinary. Like, we can't even imagine it. Like, I don't even think we would last another 4 years with him. I feel as if the whole country would burn down at that point. But we also have to be critical of the fact that Biden is not the best person either. He really isn't. which is why yelling vote, vote, vote to people is not as simple as it seems. A lot of people have come onto Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, etc. saying, if you're not voting, I don't want to be your friend anymore. If you're not voting, you suck. If you're not voting, this, and that. But you have to realize that people have genuine reasons for not voting. People have genuine reasons as to why they're not going to be going out into the polls. Whether it's because due to COVID, they don't want to go out, and that's for like older folks. And older folks also have a harder time navigating the whole mail-in ballots. So that's one instance. And for younger folks, especially those within Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, trans folks, LGBTQ folks as a whole, women of color, we have seen the effects of what voting does. We have seen the effects of what voting does not do. And we have seen what this country has to offer us, which is not a lot. So Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ people as a whole, people within this, like everyone who's not a straight cisgendered white male has faced some sort of oppression one way or another, and therefore they're somewhat disillusioned with the system. For Black, Indigenous people of color, we have faced numerous instances of disenfranchisement, from the fact that Black people did not even get the right to vote until like the 1900s, for women not being able to vote until the 1900s. Like, voting has never been in our favor until recently. And even then, you see what happened in 2016. We had the popular votes for Hillary Clinton. Again, not the best candidate, but she was what we had. We had the popular votes for her, and yet the Electoral College screwed us over and was like, you know what, we're gonna put Trump up. And I was looking into that. I was like, okay, who's the Electoral College? Who chooses them? Why are they chosen? All of those things. And we don't even really get to choose who the Electoral College is within our states, which is dangerous because they're supposed to follow the sentiments of their people. But if they can't even follow the popular vote, what's the point? Not only that, but there's also instances of voter suppression that happens within this country. States across the country have been shutting down polling places in predominantly Black, Indigenous, people of color areas, making it harder for those people to go out and vote. It's deliberative. It's deliberative, and it's a way in order to suppress their voices so that way a certain regime or a certain agenda gets to be on the forefront. That's not okay. And we've faced this countless of times, and we've battled this countless of times to no avail. Not only that, but then you have, gerrymandering and the idea of cutting counties and stuff into specific districts in order to sway some sort of state or some sort of area to Republican or Democrat. That's also dangerous. So all of these things have made people become more disillusioned with the idea of voting, because it's like, okay, does my vote even really matter at this point if there's so many factors that are working against me in order to not allow me to see that? There's also the idea of systemic racism. Systemic racism is not going to go away just because we put Biden in power. And now people will say, well, Biden can be there in order to try to dismantle these things. But you need to recognize that once you're in that position, you're adopting a 200-plus-year-old country that was built on systemic racism. And it's harder than it seems to simply topple down those things. You cannot fix the system while being within the system. You have to work against it. That's my thoughts. These are my opinions. I don't believe that it's a matter of just voting somebody in order to dismantle everything. That's not what their goal is either, to be honest. Even Bernie, Bernie, yes, he was one of the more progressive candidates that we do have. But he also has to play within the system because of the position that he was going to assume. If he completely went against the system, he would have never gotten anything passed if he were to be president. He would never get anything signed. Nothing would end up on his desk if he were to be that, and there would be no sort of progress. So unfortunately, you have to give and take when you're in the system. And sometimes you give more. Sometimes you give more than you get back. Same thing happening with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is one of the more progressive people that we have currently in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. However, she is also bogged down by the system. So everything that she proposes may not always be passed because there are systems that are working against her and her progressive agenda. So if you're in the system, it's harder to dismantle something that is entrenched in racism, in ableism, in homophobia, transphobia, etc. When you're in there, it's better to be on the outside and then trying to like smash it down from the outside. So that's why a lot of people are probably not willing to go vote, because they feel as if their vote is ineffective and is not going to do anything. However, this video is not to tell you why you shouldn't go out there, especially to white people. White people, you have the utmost privilege in this country. The best thing you can do is to use your vote in order to benefit those who do not have as much privileges as you do. That is one thing I will say. Me personally, I am gonna go vote in November, but I'm not voting simply because I think voting is the end all be all. I'm voting because I don't want another 4 years of Trump, and it's the only thing I have in my arsenal at the moment to do. I can't do anything else right now as a college student, as a content creator, as an advocate on social media. I have very little time on my hands to go down into communities and be in that work right now. That is something that I hope that I can do once I graduate and I have more resources towards me, especially monetary resources. But at the moment, the most that I can do is use my vote and use my voice about my vote. So I'm going to do that. So I encourage people to do that. However, I'm not going to shame people into voting. I'm not going to bully people into voting, because that is not the best way to get change. That is not how you persuade people. Bullying is not a form of rhetoric. It's just mean. It's just plain mean. And if you think that bullying people is going to bring people towards you, that people are going to gravitate towards you, you got another thing coming. This video is not going to be just like, oh my God, voting is evil, don't vote. I do have some proposed solutions. I feel as if, me personally, again, this is my opinion. Oftentimes when Black women voice their opinions on this web platform, they get hate for it, when we're allowed to have our opinions. So I'm going to state my own. I think that voting is the first step. I do not think, like I said before, it is not the end all be all. You cannot just simply cast your ballot and then do nothing else. You need to supplement it with further action. So I like to propose the idea of not only voting nationally, but make sure you're voting locally. Make sure you're voting within your small little communities. Make sure you're voting within your state. Make sure you're voting within your city. Make sure that you're putting people in positions of power that you can trust, that are from the community, that know who you are and have heard your voice. I think that has much more direct impact on the communities that are suffering, compared to simply just voting for a figurehead to sit in the White House and then let it all be that. I also think it's good to organize within your communities. Organize to bring about some sort of solution to whichever problems that you're facing, whether it be food shortages, whether it be homelessness, etc. Right now here in Philadelphia, we have people who are continuously protesting at the homeless encampments in order to advocate for housing now for those who are homeless within the city, and for the city to put the vacant houses that they have here into a community trust for those who are homeless. Things like that have much more of a direct impact within Philadelphia compared to, let's say, voting for the governor of Pennsylvania or voting for the president of the United States. So start locally and then expand from there, because then you can provide resources and have them work in real time to your communities, versus waiting and waiting and waiting for somebody up again in DC to say something to you all. But besides that, voting might be the only thing that people can do right now. I know that a lot of people feel as if their vote does matter because it's the only thing that they have at hand. A lot of people are going to be first-time voters this time. This is my first time voting. I'm only 20 years old. So, like I said earlier, voting is the only thing I can do right now. Voting is the only thing a lot of my peers can do right now. A lot of my peers are on the ground doing work, but a lot of my peers are also entrenched in other work that they cannot, per se, sacrifice at the moment in order to do more community-based work. So voting is all we got. And also, this system does work with voting. Voting is never gonna disappear anytime soon within this country. Voting is the thing that voting is a part of the system, basically. That's literally all I can say. And it's not like we can expect, voting to be abolished anytime soon. No, would I like to see the Electoral College abolished? 100%. I believe that popular vote should be the way to go. Why do we need 3 to 4, 5 figureheads, whatever the case may be? But then it gets dicey with states and populations and the numbers of people here, and that's for another video. But what I will say is that because voting is all we got right now in any sense of autonomy about how our government looks, people are gonna do it. But again, like I said, do not shame people for not wanting to vote, especially Black, Indigenous people of color, because you don't know what they're going through, not only within themselves, but also within their communities. You have not lived their lives. You do not know how the systems work against them 100%. And if you don't, then you really should look into it. Ask your friends, why don't you feel comfortable with voting? Ask your communities, what has voting done for you? And if it hasn't done anything for them, then you can see why they might have a bit of distrust with the governments. You need to start those conversations. You can't simply just say, if you're not voting, then you're an asshole. Or, if you're not voting, then you have privilege and you don't care about politics. Because it's deeper than that, especially for Black, Indigenous people of color. So you really, really need to think outside of the box and start thinking more with nuance than simply thinking that it's a black and white vote, don't vote. Because it's so much more than that. With that being said, thank you for watching this video. I may or may not see you at the polls in November. If I don't, I trust you. I know that you're doing what you gotta do. And if you are there, then hello. Hopefully you're voting for the right person. Because I really don't want to see another 4 years of Trump, but at this point I really don't know, because the world gave us 4 years of Trump, so we'll see. I do this a lot with my hands, I'm sorry, but please like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends and whatever. I'm gonna put some resources in the links down below in the description box for you to look at ways to get registered, ways to check your registration, as well as some literature and some reasoning behind why folks may or may not be comfortable with voting, so you can get a better understanding of where people are coming from when it comes to why they're not voting. And with that, I will see you later. Bye-bye.
Ryan Little.